Hello everyone. In writing the review of related literature, the structure plays a vital role. This presentation aims to discuss and present some steps and tips for writing the structure well. Step 1 is identifying incorrect approaches. Most students correctly begin with an introduction where they might discuss their overall purpose, hypothesis, and so forth. But then they will begin the first paragraph with author 1 says that. Then the next paragraph they will say author 2 says this, making each paragraph about a separate author. Notice that we are not connecting the authors in any way. Students will continue this until they run out of sources. This isn't what you are expected to do. Not only does this structure make it difficult to read, it also makes it very difficult for you to write. Step 2 is visual representation of theme creation. This big bubble is a visual representation of all of the relevant literature on your topic. Anything and everything, including research on the topic itself, or even maybe a theory that is somehow connected. The size of the bubble is determined by your topic. Some broader topics have larger bubbles. Now, assume that as we are reading this material, we begin to see certain patterns or themes. We start to see that different authors begin discussing the same things. Those things might be a definition of an abstract term, a methodology, an interaction between certain variables, or a disagreement. As the reader, we can begin to categorize our sources by those themes, breaking the bubble into several smaller bubbles, each of which address a topic within the literature review. Notice how this step has you organize the information into more understandable chunks. This is what your literature review is trying to do. Another way to look at this is to imagine a series of buckets, with each bucket representing a cluster or theme we start noticing in the literature. As we collect more sources, we can place them into their respective themed buckets. Step 3, the theme-based literature review. And this visual depicts the same. Now that we have our themes, we can begin to organize our paper in such a way that it is idea-driven as opposed to author-driven, or a series of unrelated separate statements, one for each author. In this diagram, we create a label for each theme. This is a bubble or bucket, and make it a subheading. Then we will put all of our authors that have discussed this theme underneath that subheading. Now, instead of focusing on a single author and what they said, we now organize the authors by idea. They are not discussed separately. Rather, we will write the literature review like a discussion. Once we have finished one conversation, say theme 1, we are ready to move on to the next theme, following the same process. Remember, there is no magic number to the themes. That depends on the topic and the number of resources you have. Step 4 is an example from the discipline of education. Let's focus on the structure, not the content. Notice the use of subheadings in this literature. Let's identify the themes the author deemed important with this particular topic. The first theme deals with the meaning of charter school. Before the author discusses anything regarding a charter school, it's important to discuss what we actually mean by a charter school. So, in this write-up, the author divides the paragraphs into 4 topics. The first obviously is the meaning of charter school and its characteristics, wherein he also mentions the origin of issues in the initial paragraphs. Next, we find that the theme begins with the sentence, "This article addresses those challenges, both operational and organizational, wherein the author discusses the literature concerning these challenges, with each of the two challenges so identified having three subheadings." So next we find that the author is dealing with the two challenges and its sub themes or subheadings. Operational challenges is divided into 3 points or themes: philosophical conflict, poor relationships with the local district, inadequate funding. Organizational challenges is again divided into 3 sub-themes: structural issues, lack of expertise to provide services, ineffective role of the administrators. So, our paragraphs in literature reviews should be idea or topic driven as opposed to author driven. Thus, in this way, we find that the author is experiencing what writing instructors call the Burkean parlor metaphor, which argues that you are joining a conversation that began way before your time. It's like an unending conversation. Imagine that you walk into this parlor just trying to get a feel of what's being said. At this point, you are listening to certain tables in that parlor, noticing how the people sitting at the "What is a charter school?" and "What are the challenges of charter schools?" tables are having a debate. These authors, although sometimes separated by 50 or more years, are having a conversation through time. In the literature review, it is your task to help me, the reader, understand what's being discussed at all of those tables. What did you hear? What did they discuss? What conclusions can you make about those topics? Now I move towards some tips for the structure for writing a review of related literature. We can use the mind maps for planning purposes. Mind maps are a visual map to link and organize key concepts of your research. They also show links and relationships between ideas. In the given mind map on the slide, we find motivation is linked to definitions, rewards, internal forces, autonomy, self-control, self-motivation, theories, and then each of these are again linked to sub-themes or sub-points within them. Tips for structure includes tips for writing introduction. Introduction is very important because it sets the pace of your literature review. An introduction must tell the reader the following: what you are going to cover in the review, the scope of your research, how the review ties in with your own research topic. You can see on the slide, different colors are used to depict the role played by introduction. In the pink, we find topic sentence, which identifies 5 major themes as the scope of this review. In green, we find the 5 major themes to be covered. And lastly, in the orange font, we find concluding sentences, which are nothing but specific focus of the literature review. To develop an integrated argument from multiple sources, you need to link your arguments together. How this is done is illustrated on the slide. The topic sentence outlines your main claim or key point for that paragraph, depicted in orange. Then your supporting evidences are quoted, are mentioned from the readings that you have done. So we find the first one given in blue and the second one given in green, and that is a contrasting theory from research. So we can have contrasting theories as well as in the review to develop the argument. Lastly, in the pink, we find the concluding sentence which links this particular theme or idea to the next paragraph. Further, it is important to integrate your analysis and interpretation of the literature in your literature review. Read the paragraph and see how the arguments have been integrated into the paragraph along with student analysis. Analysis is not just student opinion, it needs to be supported by literature. So in this example, we find the topic sentence outlines the main claim or the key point for that paragraph, and that is given in orange color. The first statement of evidence from the literature is in blue color. Notice how the authors and the year of the study is mentioned, is cited. Then we find in the green a second statement of evidence from the literature. Then we have in the pink the student analysis, and this is the most important part of writing a review of related literature. Very important part of the structure. And the last is the concluding statement, wherein the focus is once again specified for that particular paragraph. We can also use linking and reporting verbs to make the structure meaningful and effective for the readers. In the given example, we see some reporting verbs that are mentioned: argue that, focused on, outlined by, suggest that. And some reporting verbs are also mentioned, some linking verbs are also mentioned, similarly, however, but. So we find the use of linking and reporting verbs make your writing meaningful and interesting for the readers. The literature reviews generally move from general to more specific, taking in all the elements mentioned previously. It is just like a convergence strategy. Build your story by identifying areas of consensus and areas of divergence. For example, it seems there is agreement among researchers. Much debate exists on the issue of, and so on and so forth. Possible structures of the literature review could be distant to close, the most distantly related to your work leading to the most closely related to your work. Chronological, which is earliest related work to most recent related work. Compare and contrast valid approaches, features, characteristics, theories, that is, one approach, then a second approach, followed by a third approach. Finally, consider the use of summary paragraphs throughout the body of the review. For example, in summary, the evidence presented demonstrates that. Rather, this literature supports the theory that. Consequently, the population studied may experience. However, alternative ideas and findings suggest. So, dear friends, I think this presentation would help you in making your structure better and effective in writing the review of related literature. Thank you.